What's up, everybody? This is Josh from Everything College Basketball, and it is officially conference tournament championship week, as it's called in the business. And around the country, we are officially embarking on the final week before Selection Sunday, which means it is conference tournament season for the big boys around the country. We've already seen bids punch. Drake has won the Missouri Valley Conference. I was in attendance live covering for Everything College Basketball when SIUE won the Ohio Valley Conference Tournament this last Saturday in Evansville, Indiana. Now it's time to turn our attention to the ACC Conference. When we look at the ACC from a historical perspective, you think Duke, Carolina. Obviously, Louisville still relatively new to this conference, only joining back around a decade and a half ago at this point. Syracuse as well. But the ACC's tradition runs deep in college basketball, except for this year, and really the downside's been the last couple years. If you take away NCAA tournament success, obviously we've known North Carolina's won a couple in the last 15 years. Duke's won a couple. North Carolina State, who could forget the magical run through this exact same tournament we're about to talk about last year, which propelled them to a Final Four run. But if we're talking about depth of the conference and the conference as a whole, the ACC has been down a couple levels compared to what it normally is historically. If you look at KenPom this year, ACC ranks 5th in conference standings, behind the SEC, behind the Big Ten, behind the Big 12, and behind the Big East by a pretty substantial margin. It's so down, as a matter of fact, that the Mountain West, who is in 6th place, is only a point difference behind them. If you ask in comparison to what the ACC being in 5th is to the Big East, it's 4-point difference in the KenPom metrics. The Big East comes in with a rating of 13.58. The ACC in 5th is 9.38, and the Mountain West is an 8.44. By comparison, the SEC, as we all know, the best conference of college basketball this year, possibly ever, they're at a 22.07. So it really tells you how far the ACC has fallen this year in particular. There's no surprise. There is one elite team and a couple really good teams followed by a bunch of mediocrity. Duke is the elite team. They're the number 1 seed. They won the regular season, and they should be the overwhelming favorite in Charlotte on this tournament that begins tomorrow on Tuesday, or today if you're watching this, as a matter of fact. They should be the overwhelming favorite to dominate and run through this tournament. The only question for Duke being, when we look at this bracket here in a minute, how motivated are they? They've got a 1 seed, potentially the overall number 1 seed when the brackets are revealed on Selection Sunday. How motivated are they? Do they choose to go in and let's tinker with some stuff? Do you really put the pedal to the floor and try to go win this thing? Or do you think, let's see what happens? Nobody wants to lose, but let's see what happens. Maybe and a couple extra days rest is best for us because we do have such a great team and a chance to make it to San Antonio and cut down the Nets for the 6th time in program history. Behind Duke, the 2 teams I talked about that are really good are Louisville and Clemson. Finished 2 and 3 in the league this year. Louisville, what a resurgence. Pat Kelsey gets brought in after the disastrous 2-year run from Kenny Payne. Pat Kelsey has to flip an entire roster, and he does overnight. Louisville ends up winning 25 games this year. 18-2 in the ACC, 25 wins overall. What a miraculous turnaround. And we've said this before. When college basketball is at its best, it's programs that have historic power to them, like Louisville with the fan base and the tradition. They are towards the top of it. So Louisville being back in the mix again is great for college basketball. And Clemson, they're really, really elite at Little John Coliseum. They've got the win over Duke earlier this year. They've got the win over Kentucky earlier this year. Their problem has been going on the road, but they did finish 18-2 in the league. So the road didn't bother them as bad this year as maybe in years past. Clemson finishes the regular season with a record of 26-5, 18-2 in the league. Outside of those 3 teams, North Carolina comes in, a team that had a chance to make a real statement back on Saturday against Duke. A win there would have solidified an NCAA tournament bid, at least for the time being. they've been fighting the bubble all year long. Some weeks they're in, some weeks they're clearly out, but they're 20-12, 13-7 in the league. Wake Forest is another team that just, it seems like year in and year out at this point, that they'll win a game or two early in the year that makes you believe that they're NCAA tournament bound, and then they'll reel off 4 really bad losses, especially considering this year the league being so down. And you got a bunch of other, let's just call it what it is, underachieving teams. SMU, Pittsburgh. We've got big storylines. Leonard Hamilton is embarking on what could be his final games as the head coach of Florida State, because he is retiring at the end of the year. They've already announced his replacement. Luke Locks is coming in, former Florida State player for Leonard Hamilton, is already agreed to take over the program beginning next year. So do we get a magical run that we've seen in years past, where a coach announces his retirement and then the team rallies? I mean, we're seeing in Indiana right now where Mike Woodson announced that he'll retire at the end of the year and step away, and Indiana's been playing their best basketball of the year since then. Can Florida State make a magical North Carolina State run this year? Can they be the Carolina State of this year? And then Virginia, we know at the beginning of the year, Tony Bennett retired. They've really struggled. Miami finished dead last. They didn't even qualify for this tournament. So a lot of changes happened in the last few years in the ACC conference. And really, again, it is a down league this year. But let's take a look at the conference standings here, or the conference tournament, should I say. And let's go through this. First round action begins on Tuesday. Today, if you were watching this, tomorrow for me as I'm recording this live. You see the first game of the conference tournament with the 12-13 game between Notre Dame and Pitt. Pitt was another team for a brief period at the beginning of the year, looked like an NCAA tournament team. They were top 4 in the league, and they have completely just fallen off. Notre Dame's a team that struggled mightily through most of the year. They have a player in Marcus Burton, though, that could carry them to a couple wins and really upset. If you look at their potential path, we talked about a couple teams that are trying to fight for an NCAA tournament bid. Notre Dame could be that upset apple, or however the phrase goes, where they could really make life miserable for a couple teams in this tournament. And they do so on the back of Marcus Burton, who just coming off of a 43-point performance. You look at the 4:30 game also in the first round, right after that, 10-seed Virginia Tech against 15-seed Cal. Cal is another team that I personally thought coming into this year in their first year in the league would be much better. They barely made the ACC tournament this year with a 13-18 record overall and 6-14 in the league, having lost 8 of their last 9 games. I thought with a kid coming in from Stanford, Andrei Stojakovic, I thought he would be able to really carry him. Jovan Blacksher coming in from Grand Canyon, Mady Sissoko coming in from Michigan State. They've got high-level talent, but it's just the pieces of not fit for one reason or another. But with that being said, all it takes is a tournament like this, when you do have some talent, to maybe find yourself and get rolling a little bit. Will be interesting to see if the Cal Bears can find some magic. In the last first round game of Tuesday night, we talked about Florida State, the 11-seed Florida State against 14-seed Syracuse. Again, Syracuse, man, just the fall from grace absolutely needs to be studied from the orange here, because it wasn't that long ago that Syracuse in the Big East was running things, and they were making Final Fours, and they were high elite level talent. Now they do have talent. JJ Starling, who came in from Notre Dame. They've got Eddie Lampkin, who transferred in from TCU. They've got some guys, but they've just not been able to put it all together for Adrian Autry in his second year. Don't know if they will, to be completely honest, but it's similar to kind of Cal. You've got a couple dudes, they get hot, you find a rhythm. This is the perfect time for it. If you got dudes and you can get hot, again, North Carolina State did it last year. So you never know in tournament play, but Syracuse, a 14 seed, barely making the cutoff with a 7-13 conference mark this year. Just really disappointing. Now, Carmelo Anthony's son, Keon Anthony's coming in next year. We'll see if fortunes change for Syracuse, but the fall from grace needs to be studied. Now, let's get into some predictions here. First round action. Pittsburgh just does not impress me. Again, we all kind of bought into it earlier in the year. but they do not impress me. Notre Dame obviously hasn't impressed me much either, but anytime you have a guy like Marcus Burton and they play such a slow tempo that it is very, very hard to defend against. When a team slows the game down, especially if they slow the game down and bury a three late in the clock, that is demoralizing. To have to play defense for 29 seconds and then they bury a three, or Marcus Burton hits a running floater that has no business going in and he just makes it. Notre Dame's 80th in offense. They're 307th in tempo. Again, slow tempo. But they shoot the three ball decently, 36.1%. And again, the Marcus Burton factor. Braden Shrewsbury, the coach's son, can shoot a little bit. Matt Aloko coming in from the Ivy League. He can shoot coming in from Princeton. I think Notre Dame, if you're looking for a sleeper in this tournament, like a real darling that could be that North Carolina State from last year, I think it's Notre Dame. I've got Notre Dame beating Pittsburgh to move on to play North Carolina. I got Notre Dame giving North Carolina all they want and more. North Carolina absolutely needs it, and they're in Charlotte, so it will be a huge Tar Heel contingent. But it's tournament time, and things can happen, and they do happen all the time. Let Notre Dame knock off Pitt, get to the second round on Wednesday, and if they can get hot, they could really make life miserable for North Carolina. If you recall, they played North Carolina back on January 4th towards the beginning conference play to a 74-73 loss. It was in South Bend. They did lose that game, but it's a game that they had in the bag, and North Carolina hit a three late to escape South Bend with a win. This is the only time these two teams have played this year. So Notre Dame can absolutely knock off North Carolina, which in my opinion puts not in my opinion, but Notre Dame moves on to the quarterfinals where they play a Wake Forest team. Again, backs against the wall. They know they need to probably go win the ACC tournament to make the big dance and get the AQ to lock things up. Love Hunter Salas. I really do love Hunter Salas, and I think Wake Forest has some pieces. But you let Notre Dame beat Pitt, and you let them basically spoil North Carolina's season. You get hot, I think they could win another one, get to Wake Forest. I think my surprise of this tournament is Notre Dame, behind Marcus Burton, behind three-point shooting, and behind tempo, gets to semifinal Friday where they'll ultimately get crushed by Duke. But that could be a very Cinderella story right there. I've got Cal over Virginia Tech. There's nothing about Virginia Tech, and I had no offense, Hokie fans. There's nothing about Virginia Tech that stands out to me. At least with Cal, they have dudes, they just not put it together. Andre Stojakovic, as we talked about, is a dude. They've just not put it together. Give me another upset-laden run here. Give me Cal over Virginia Tech to move on to play Stanford in the second round. And then give me Leonard Hamilton in retirement tour. Does not end on Tuesday night. They beat Syracuse to move on to play SMU. Second round, we have Georgia Tech and Virginia. Virginia with a head coaching change, things just not going what we've been used to for Virginia here lately. 15-16 for Ron Sanchez this year, and maybe his only year as head coach. That's yet to be determined. Again, they've kept that typical Virginia slow down pace. 97th in offense. They finished 8-12 in the league. They do shoot the three ball well, though. I'll give them that. 37.6%. They do shoot the three ball pretty well. They've got a guy in Isaac McNeely that has played really well this year. Day Ames has been good. Elijah Saunders. They've got some guys. They do have some guys. Georgia Tech, on the other hand, 16-15 overall, 10-10 in the league. They did beat Louisville. One of Louisville's two losses in the league this year. Caught Louisville probably napping back on February 1st down in Atlanta. Was able to get Louisville and followed it up with a 3 overtime victory in Little John Coliseum against Clemson. So back-to-back games. They won at home, won on the road. They beat the second and third best team in this league. So they can clearly get it done. With that being said, I'm going to take Georgia Tech. They've got better wins. I think this game plays better for them if they can get out in transition and use some of their athletes. I've got Georgia Tech going on to play Duke. I've already mentioned I've got Notre Dame against North Carolina. Cal against Stanford. I've got Cal continuing their run taking down Stanford. Again, let this team get a win under their belt, feel some momentum. They're playing with house money. Nobody expects them to do anything. They take down their rival Stanford to move on to quarterfinal Thursday. And Florida State continues to run. SMU, again, nothing about SMU. A team about a month ago that everybody thought was on the bubble of making the NCAA tournament team, or making the NCAA tournament. They don't have a quad one win, to my knowledge. They don't have one quad one win because of what the ACC has been this year. It's not presented them as such. You don't have a quad one win. You don't deserve to be in the NCAA tournament, regardless if you got the 32nd best offense and if you're 22-9. Boopie Miller is a really good player. Came in from Wake Forest, a really talented player. Matt Cross, former Miami and Louisville player, can shoot. They've got dudes. But if you don't have a quad one win, I don't trust it. Give me Florida State in the Leonard Hamilton retirement tour to keep on rolling. We're talking about quarterfinals. I've got Duke blowing out Georgia Tech. They're that good. They're just that good. Like I said, I had Notre Dame upsetting North Carolina here. Notre Dame takes down Wake Forest and ends 2 bubble hopes there. I really think this is the Cinderella run. That puts Cal against Louisville. Everybody knows I'm a Kentucky fan, but I love this Louisville team. Now, I will say a Louisville run is dependent on Ryan Smith's health. He missed the last couple games, including senior night. He's got an ankle issue. If he's ready to go, Louisville can be the real deal, not only in this, but in the NCAA tournament. But I think even without him, they put their boots to Cal, who would be on their 3rd day in a row of playing games. Louisville shoots the 3 well. They play high tempo. They've got too many dudes. 4 different 30-point scorers this year. Man, they'll have the better players. Louisville blows out Cal. Florida State, Clemson. Florida State, I think, again, motivated for Leonard Hamilton, not wanting this ride in just yet. They will play Clemson very close. I firmly believe they will hit the backboard. They'll do all the trademark, hallmark things that Leonard Hamilton, Florida State teams have done in years past. But Clemson's too much at the end of the day. They get it done to move to semifinal Friday. That makes us Duke versus Notre Dame. This is where Notre Dame's run comes to an end. They can shoot the 3. They may even have a big run in them where they hit 4 or 5 in a row, but it won't matter at the end of the day. Duke's the better team. Duke's more talented, and Duke blows out Notre Dame to go to the championship Saturday. Louisville, Clemson, 2-3, tied with the same record. Louisville wins the tiebreaker because of the head-to-head. Give me the Cardinals. But again, it's dependent if Ryan Smith is playing. If he's playing, he gives them that sniper that can just get a shot off like that. A backup secondary point guard. Chucky Hepburn has been absolutely amazing this year coming in from Wisconsin. Not only his scoring has been off the charts, but defensively. You're talking about a dude that is in games this year at 6-7 steals. I think he can get under Clemson's skin, and I think Louisville sweeps Clemson. I know it's a boring championship game on Saturday, but it's probably the best game. 1 Duke, 2 Louisville. Louisville, the only matchup these 2 teams played was back in January, at the beginning of January, in the KFC Yum Center. Louisville had a lead early. They battled, but once Duke got the lead, they were able to gain some ground, kind of kept Louisville at bay despite the Cards playing decent enough to stay in this ball game. Duke was just a better team. Duke won that game 76-65. Being that it is in Charlotte, and being that Duke is the best team in the country right now, I may be crazy. I think the Louisville Cardinals, again, depending on Ryan Smith's health situation. But the way Louisville's playing, and they've heard for a long time now because the ACC, as we mentioned earlier, is weak. The resume as far as Q1s doesn't look great. But you're talking about a team that has won 25 games, that shoots the 3 ball incredibly well, right? Well, 33.3%, but they take a lot. That's what I mean. They shoot high volume. They're 19th in defense. They're riding a 9-game win streak. The last loss being to Georgia Tech, or else it would be dating back to the Kentucky game, December 14th. That is a really good team. They've got size to compete with Duke. They can shoot to compete with Duke. If they could keep it close down to the final segment of the game, final 4 minutes, and don't beat themselves with turnovers, I think Louisville can win this game. I'm going out on a limb. I think your ACC champions this year are the Louisville Cardinals. Call me crazy. Tell me I'm stupid for having Notre Dame going to the semis. Tell me that North Carolina fans eat me up in this. Tell me that I'm wrong and Carolina is going to get to the semifinals and get that win over Duke finally and punch their bid to the NCAA tournament. Clemson fans tell me I'm done. Whatever you want to do. My opinion, Louisville Cardinals take down Duke. They're your ACC champions of this year, 2024-2025.